Okay, I know I'm way behind the trend on this one, but here I am looking at the debut album, Eternal Blue, by one of the hottest new bands in the scene right now, Spiritbox. Hello, welcome back to Crushing Sounds. My name is Chris. So I'm going to guess that out of the few of you that have stumbled across this video, almost all of you are aware of Spiritbox by now. Releasing their debut album Eternal Blue last year, the band quickly became one of the most talked about bands in the heavy metal scene. As I remember in the months leading up to the release of this album, all the various journalism outlets and whatnot were hyping up the impending release. I honestly can't remember the last time I saw anything quite like it. A band who hadn't released anything before, not a full length anyway, were dropping their debut album later this year, and everyone was following the upcoming release months before it eventually came. It was quite weird to see, but great. I wish we would do that more often for new bands, not just stick to the bands that we know already good. Let's get excited about some new stuff. Of course, I heard this album when it dropped. How could I not? The album and this band were just everywhere. Not only was everyone talking about them and this album, it was being lauded as an incredible piece of music, with many outlets placing it in their top albums of 2021, normally within their top 5, some of them even at number 1. I did put out a vote last year as to whether I should look at this album, but you all voted for Trivium instead, which I very much appreciate. That was an amazing album as well. So why am I looking at this album now, all this time later? Well, the band just did their debut UK show at Download Festival. I think it was last weekend at the time of recording this video. I wasn't there. I'm a Bloodstock loyalist now. I moved on from Download, but you know, no bad blood or anything. But I wasn't there. But apparently they went down fantastically. I seriously questioned their placement in the day. What the hell were you thinking? Apparently it was rammed in that tent and they had a very short set. I mean, even back when this initial lineup of Download was announced, you probably could have sensed that these guys were going to be bigger than where they were placed, but whatever. I don't profess to know how booking festivals work, so maybe I'm just talking out my ass. But my point is, this band are very, very clearly here to stay and stick around, so I should give my 2 cents on this critically acclaimed album. That, and they are also one of those bands that always bring out the "they're not heavy metal" crowd out of the dregs, so I always enjoy annoying those kind of people, so you know, by praising albums that they deem unworthy. So let's pray I like this album for that reason and that reason alone. I should do a little context into the artist, of course. Not that this will come as news to most people, but whatever, gotta do the journalistic obligation. Spiritbox were formed by husband and wife duo Mike Stringer and Courtney LaPlante. I hope I'm pronouncing his surname correctly there, but probably not. They are both the guitarist and the vocalist, respectively. They formed after they left the band I Wrestled a Bear Once. They were not original members of that band, and from what I've read online, they were not satisfied within that band and left to form their own band, hence Spiritbox. I'm not going to say that that was definitely fact as to why they left I Wrestled a Bear Once, but I have seen that cited more than once, so it's probably likely. I have only one experience with I Wrestled a Bear Once, at least I did before I listened to Spiritbox. I had heard the song "You Know That Them," what's it called? You know that ain't them dogs' real voices, I think is what I've written here. I can't recall if I've written that down really badly or if the song is just that badly titled. I have a feeling it's the latter. It must have been right when the song dropped though, because it went on YouTube about 10 years ago, and that's about when I recall hearing this song. And I heard it again prior to this review. It is utterly dreadful. It was terrible then. It is terrible now. What's hilarious though is if you look at the comments on said video, you'll see a lot of people saying this band were way ahead of their time. It would be way better received now if I Wrestled a Bear Once were popular now. No, I'm sorry. It's fucking awful. The production is thin. The nonsensical guitar lines don't sound mathy, they sound flimsy. The vocals are garbage. It's just as horrendous as their name, which is always spelled without spaces. Why? You know, each to their own. I'm sure some people liked that stuff, but really? Now, to be fair, when Mike and Courtney were in the band, I refuse to say that band name anymore. It did sound a lot more polished when those two were in that band. I haven't heard much of that, I confess. I only heard a little bit just to get a bit of context before this album. I wanted to get to Spiritbox, which I guess is what really mattered. I doubt I Wrestled a Bear Once will get a new lease of life or anything. Let's leave that band firmly in the 2010s where they belong. So, without further delay, let's get on to the album Eternal Blue. As I said, I heard this album right when it came out. I've heard it a few times, in fact. It is one that I occasionally would put on for reasons I'll get into later. Partly, though, it's because there are bits that I really liked, but mostly I was trying to figure out why this album was getting so much critical acclaim, because to get the general view of my thoughts out of the way now, I don't really get it. Actually, that's not completely true. I do get it in parts. I'm so very mixed on this album because it almost feels like two albums that have been smashed together. The genre is pretty easy to identify, though. It's modern metalcore, emphasis on the modern. I've seen so many people call this band so many different things. Metal Injection's Max Morin claims attempting to pigeonhole this band into one specific genre is pointless. With respect, Max, they're metalcore. They just are. I think the reason, though, why I kept coming back to this album, in fact, I know this is the reason why I kept coming back to this album quite a bit, was because the first few tracks on the album gave me so much promise. I genuinely really like the first 3 tracks on the album, so let's get straight into them. The opening song, Sun Killer, is a really strong opener. You almost can't imagine the album opening in any other way, really. I know some people are starting to get sick of the electronic elements in newer heavy metal music. Even Venom Prison are doing it now to an extent. I'm not sick of it yet. I think it's cool, and it's these elements that kind of made me say emphasis on the modern before, because that electronic modern stamp is quite prevalent within this album, but I think it adds another layer to everything else that's going on. Just lifts it a little bit higher as opposed to generic chugging metalcore, really. And Sunkiller is filled with a lot of it, and I think it's used very effectively to build tension. Tension really is the apt word for this song. It really is good at tension. It kind of builds not just the ending of the song, which I'll get into in a minute, but also the album in general, really. Courtney really does have an excellent voice. Whatever I say about this album, the big takeaway here is she is a powerhouse of a vocalist, both clean and harsh. And we get treated to those harsh vocals at the end of the track. After a very low and rather tense repeating of Sun Killer Sing Me to Sleep, which does go on a little bit long, not gonna lie, but after that bit, it explodes. Full harsh vocals, the guitars do kind of this pulsating effect. I honestly haven't heard anything quite like that before, at least not in a very long time. It's the kind of massive drop I would expect to hear from Code Orange, and it's really heavy, it's really fucking cool, and a good way to smack you in the face right at the start of the album. My one gripe of it, though, is when the vocals come charging in at that point, it almost sounds like they've cut off the very, very beginning of the vocal track to make it line up exactly where everything else is coming in. It just sounds a bit too artificial. I'd rather it sound a bit more human, for lack of a better word. Other than that, though, very strong opener. Sunkiller fucking kills it. Hurt You is a bit more straight metalcore, but still pretty damn solid stuff. It doesn't sacrifice the heaviness, and the chorus is very strong and very catchy. The electronic parts haven't overstayed their welcome yet. It keeps up the good momentum, and it sounds fucking massive. However, Yellow Jacket is my favourite song on the album by a country mile. It features the awesome Sam Carter of Architects on the vocals, and he is so good here. He is fantastic. I don't want to sound mean, but I prefer this song to anything on the last Architects album with regards to what he's doing vocally. I think that's what I would compare the best parts of this album to, the really heavy and best bits of Architects music rather than their newest album. What I love about his guest appearance here, though, is he's not just here for a verse or a bridge and then he's gone. He is integral to the song itself. When he comes in, he stays and he joins up with Courtney's vocals, and they sound amazing together. From here, though, is when the album loses me. It's almost as if from here on out, the album completely changes into something much more generic, much more stripped back, much more safe, and nowhere near as interesting as how it started. The Summit, which comes next, is fine. I have no issues with moments of levity. In fact, I love it when bands try and put that in an album to make the pace feel a little bit more natural and give the album room to breathe. Here's the difference, though. When Opeth's Ghost Reveries goes into Hours of Wealth, it still makes me feel something. When Oceans of Slumber go into Colours of Grace, it still makes me feel something. I feel nothing for this song. And to be honest, most of the rest of the songs on the album, it all just feels much more along the lines of typical, done-to-death metalcore, with a little bit more of an electronic edge to it. I will be fair, though, and say it's done to a very good standard. I will say again, Courtney's vocals are the highlight of this thing. They are without doubt the standout aspect of this album, and likely is what kept coming me back. But the songwriting from this point just takes a massive nosedive for me. I think the real problem here is that the brutal heaviness of what was at the forefront of the album, which they were so good at juggling with the melodic bits, is almost completely pushed to the background for the rest of the album, only to occasionally bring it back. Silk in the Strings, to be fair, is a good one. Brings the heavy back, and I love the more melodic instrumentation in the chorus. Gave me Ginger vibes at point. Holy Roller is pretty crushing, but I hate the vocal effects on this one. I've defended the electronic elements so far, but in this instance, I hate what they do to the vocals on this one. Is it to make it more industrial? I don't really listen to industrial music, so that could be the issue, but not for me at all. All the rest of the tracks, though, after that point, do very little for me. There are some good moments here and there. Secret Garden has some really good bass in the verse. The rest of it, The title track feels like the vocals and the guitars are trying to do two different songs. We Live in a Strange World I actively don't like at all. I applaud the band for doing whatever the hell they want. Every band should do that. That's the attitude my band try and take as well, but I don't like this song at all. It's a stone's throw away from a pop song. Drum pad sounds and everything. I don't know if those are drum pads, but that's what springs to mind for me anyway. If it weren't for the guitars that come in, you could hear the song on a mainstream radio. It doesn't fit. Halcyon is pretty uninteresting until the end, where the song just completely loses its mind. It was pretty tame and samey for the most part until the last 30 seconds, where it suddenly becomes balls to the wall heavy out of nowhere, not with any rhyme or reason at all. This isn't like the drop in Sun Killer, where it's built to and works. This is just completely unprovoked and feels slapped on at the end because someone in the writing process went, "No, we haven't done anything heavy in a few tracks. Fuck it, let's stick this on the end of this track." It's a mess. Circle With Me is, again, fine. Constance closes the album well enough. It has a bit more of a big open sound to it, so it works as a climax, I guess, and it has a big heavy moment before petering off into something a bit more melancholy. I swear, this album leaves me so damn confused. I think if the more typical generic metalcore bits were the whole package, I wouldn't feel the need to dissect this thing and express my disappointment with it. I would just accept that it's not my thing and then move on. But the first few tracks, I genuinely think are seriously good quality songs. Clearly this band know how to write metalcore that is not just modern, but innovative and really interesting and really well done and engaging. But the majority of the album isn't that. It's the same stuff you've heard a million times before. I think how strong the first quarter of this album is could likely be why this album became so lauded and praised and celebrated, because a strong opener can do wonders, as you know, especially in the world of Spotify and streaming, where people will normally, for better or worse, just listen to the first couple tracks and then move on. It's the first thing you hear. It makes a great first impression, pre-release singles obviously notwithstanding. And also, I'll say one more time, the vocals are so strong on this thing, so good. And yet again, all of it works. It's not done badly, with the exception of a couple structural issues later on. The production is great. I have some issues with the production choices in regards to the vocals on one or two tracks, but in terms of the actual sound quality, it sounds enormous. The guitars, when they're allowed to, sound heavy and brutal and really, really fucking good, as long as the rhythm section as well is tight as fuck. I've been tossing this damn thing around in my head ever since it came out, trying to see what everyone else sees, but all I hear is potential that isn't quite realised. I'm not going to write this band off, because there is a lot to like here for sure, and I would be very interested to hear a follow-up to see what parts of this they take forward and push even further. But also, I'd also be worried that they would pick the safe parts of the album and continue with those, rather than the bits that for me are the most innovative and the most interesting parts. I don't see the masterpiece here that a lot of people clearly do, but I can definitely see where this band can achieve that masterpiece. I will eagerly await the next Spiritbox release and hope that they bring the best parts of this album to the forefront for an incredible second album. So thanks very much for watching. This could be an unpopular one. We'll see. I've not done an album I haven't liked for quite some time, so let me know down below what you thought of this incredibly well talked about album. Let's get some more opinions in the mix as well. So thank you all for watching. Less than 50 days to Bloodstock. You know what that means. Bloodstock showcases coming up very soon. Thanks for watching. Have yourselves an incredible day. Go listen to some amazing heavy metal, and we'll see you in the next video.